So, last time on Star Wars Lore we looked at the Sith Order and their beliefs, and we had a basic look into their origins, but this episode I'm going to focus on the Jedi Order, who are the age-old enemies of the Sith. So, the Jedi Order, like the Sith Order, doesn't really begin until approximately 36,453 BBY, when the galaxy's intellectuals gathered on the planet Typhon to discover a strange energy present all around the galaxy. Anyway, this power was the Force, and a group of scholars from this group began using the Force to pursue power. Some of the scholars became dedicated to Ashla, an aspect of the Force which gave power to its followers through honesty, mercy, and compassion, basically happy thoughts. This aspect is more commonly known as the light side of the Force, or just the Force. Unfortunately, others begin to follow Bogan, or the dark side. Anyway, a huge war begins between the followers of Ashla and the followers of Bogan, and this is known as the Force Wars of Typhon. Both sides use the powers of the Force to fight and create metal swords using the Force. These swords are not lightsabers, think of them as the lead up to that, like the Mark 1. Anyway, after the war lasts quite a while, the followers of Ashla, or the light side, won, and the Bogan followers were defeated, but if you want to learn more about them, then you'll have to go check out the Sith video. Anyway, the light side users established a monastic society of peacekeepers known as the Jedi. Now, the Jedi's goal is to kind of maintain peace in the galaxy using the powers of the Force or Ashla, and to kind of stop another Force war starting, so reducing the use of Bogan. By 25,000 BBY, the Jedi had left their home planet of Typhon to settle on Osis 730, and they dedicated their time to studying Ashla, or the greater mysteries of the Force, and warning around systems about the terrible powers of Bogan. Now, the Jedi attempted to remain independent in this time by avoiding things like the newly formed Galactic Republic. Of course, this didn't last long. The Jedi decided to join the Galactic Republic in its goal of intergalactic peace, yet it remained separate, so not actually part of the Republic. Now, preaching that you will uphold the peace of the Galactic Republic, it's easy to see that the Jedi would have a lot of opposition from pretty much all corners of the galaxy, so I guess I'll just fly through a few of them. One of their earliest oppositions was a student of the dark side named Alexander, who gained a group of followers on Osis 730, and they started what's now known as a Great Schism. And this is kind of like a rebellion within the Jedi Order, as Alexander and his followers refused to accept the Jedi's order of hierarchy, with, the Masters on the top and the Padawans on the bottom, with the 12 members of the Council. Anyway, after a few battles and them spreading rumours about the Jedi and the Republic, Alexander was killed by Jedi Master Antristapina, and the Great Schism was finished. In 11,987 BBY, the Republic's Chancellor was mysteriously assassinated, and the new Chancellor, Contin Spex, was not compassionate towards the Jedi, as he was a follower of what's known as the PSD, which is basically this huge religious cult. The Chancellor pretty much turned the Republic into a dynasty with him at the top. Anyway, he started crusades against anybody who wasn't part of his faith, including the Jedi. So the Jedi obviously left the Republic, which only escalated the war, and by 1100 BBY, the Jedi Order boarded the Chancellor's ship and arrested him for war crimes, many of which were multiple genocides against the Jedi. Shortly after the Chancellor was arrested, the Jedi suspended the Galactic Senate to stop any attempts on power plays, and they attempted to put their Grand Master Beal Ductavis, I think it's pronounced, and put him in the place of Supreme Chancellor. Now, some might call this a power play, but a few generations later, the Jedi had already returned to their peaceful ways, and there was a new senator elected. By 5000 BBY, the Sith have attacked the Chorus system, which sparks off what's known as the Great Hyperspace War, with the Republican Jedi fighting the Sith, who many believed had been wiped out a long time ago. Anyway, this was an invasion of Coruscant, but it was repelled when the Sith Lord Nagasadow's ship was damaged, and he fled to Yavin 4. There's countless others, such as the Jedi Civil War and the Great Galactic War, which seem to focus around the Jedi fighting the Sith. As well as this, there's the Mandalorian Crusades, which are really cool, but I want to talk about that more next time in my Mandalorian video. Now, we've talked about the Jedi's history, now we can learn about their society, their ranks, and their overall goal. Around 4000 BBY, the Jedi relocated to Coruscant and created a large temple that we've seen many times in the films. They did this for multiple reasons, one of which was to be close to their old friend, the Galactic Republic, Another was just the fact that Ossus had been invaded that many times and it was safer to be near the Galactic Republic. Now, if you're wondering how does one become part of the Jedi Order, well, you have to be Force sensitive and pretty young. The Order takes children at a young age to train for multiple reasons, one of which is, well, they're young. They don't have all these hatred emotions that someone older may have. Another reason is that the younger you are, the more you can train, you're going to make the most of your experience, sort of. Anyway, when a Force-sensitive child arrives at the temple, it's called a Jedi Initiate. This means that they are not yet been trained as a Jedi, and have basically just been tested. After being an Initiate, you may turn into a Padawan. This is an Initiate who has passed the trials and is taught by one Jedi Master or Knight, depending on the personality and success of that person's trials. Oh yeah, basically, to pass every single stage of the Jedi ranking system, there's a trial. A Jedi Knight is one of the most common roles in the Order, and it's around after 10 years of training under a Master that a Padawan will be trialled again, and if they're successful, they'll be given the role of Knight. A Knight will take missions, offer counselling, and take on a Padawan. Finally, there's the role of Master. Now, the Jedi we meet in the films tend to be Masters, but these are Knights who've shown particular skill and have trained Padawan successfully. A Master who is very successful may be given a place on the Jedi Council. The Jedi Council is made up of 12 most skilled Masters who are successful in their missions as a Jedi. And these councillors are in charge of basically the entire Order, and they're ruled by one of the councillors who's basically got a lifelong term on there. In the case of majority of the films, it's Yoda. The Jedi, like the Sith, are expected to follow a certain code known as the Three Pillars, which has been added to by Jedi over the timeline of the Order's existence.
There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force.
The Jedi are meant to live honourably and with self-sacrifice, which differs greatly from the Sith. The Jedi have strived to hold intergalactic peace, but they come to cross purposes when defending the Galactic Republic's peace, as it has done in the past come to a point where the Jedi start fighting for a corrupt government, like the Clone Wars. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that now, and for these reasons, along with feuding with the Sith, they've gained a great amount of enemies, one of the oldest being the Mandalorians, a warrior race deemed for their prowess in battle. But more about them next time.